Y'all.
It's our pleasure to welcome now Joel Anand and Natasha Srdoc. They are host and co-host of America's Roundtable radio program, co-founders of International Leaders Summit. Joel, Natasha, good to see you guys. Thanks so much for coming on.
Good afternoon, Gerard. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Gerard. Great to be back on middays with you.
You bet. We're pleased to have you. So a lot has happened, I believe, since we last visited. We had a big election, really shocking results, I think is the way to put it. And the president-elect has wasted absolutely no time in putting together his team, his cabinet appointments, other appointments as well. I don't know that anything in particular of that list is shocking. It really shouldn't be. I think it's a different approach, it seems like, certainly a different schedule than his first term. What do you think?
Right. I mean, it's when you look at the appointments, you can see that he is delivering on a promise to drain the swamp. Because we know how the swamp works, the evolving doors of lobbyists connected to the government, connected to legislators, so that you have the greater amounts of money of taxpayers actually spending that is wasted going to special interests. So in this case, we see that President Donald Trump is delivering on his promise. He's draining the swamp. There are individuals that are known not to be connected to special interests that are placed in positions of power, such as Kennedy at Health and Human Services, such as Tulsi Gabbard for Director of National Intelligence, being in charge of all intelligence agencies, having some $100 billion in accumulative, basically work.
Spending.
Spending, and then also the Matt Gaetz that is appointed for the Secretary of Attorney General. Attorney General. So all these appointments and others are showing that the draining of swamp is being in process.
It certainly seems that way. So, Joel, what do you think about I guess, naming, if you will, but I use that kind of loosely because it's not an official federal agency, receives no federal funding, but Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, who certainly were Trump supporters, very vocal Trump supporters during the campaign, heading up this Department of Government Efficiency, which purports to really strip all the waste, fraud, and abuse out of government. That's what their purpose is. That's what they're saying they're going to do.
Indeed, Gerard. This is long time and coming. In fact, a great number of those in Washington, D.C. that have tried to address this issue have failed because they've really not had that support from the White House, and also these two individuals, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, have communicated over a period of time that they really want to deal with the government waste. And one of our key mentors and founding partners, Milton Friedman, said it best, and I'd like to share that quote with you, and if I may just read it out. If you put the federal government in charge of the Sahara Desert, in 5 years there'd be a shortage of sand, unquote. And so basically what we see here is that it's time to cut government waste and fraud. And there's a great number of federal employees that are here in Washington, D.C., and actually their net income, their income per year, is significantly much higher than what you would get in the private sector. And when you combine their income and the benefits, it's around $144,000 a year. And that is paid by the
double,
taxpayer.
Joel. Almost double what the median household income is in this country, which is around $79K.
Exactly.
Almost double that.
Right.
And I think Americans are saying that just doesn't sound right. 2 million federal workers, many of whom are still under the COVID era of working from home.
Exactly. And this has to stop. In fact, Americans have given President Trump a mandate. And I think that is so certain because of the victories in the House and the Senate. And with this opportunity, I think this is really, sort of once in a generation or even beyond that, perhaps once in 100 years, that we'll have an opportunity to really address the bureaucracy that we have, the bloated bureaucracy, and really address this on behalf of America's taxpayers.
And what you said, it's ridiculous, actually, that taxpayers are paying government bureaucrats to regulate them, so bringing more damage to the society economy, and we're paying for it, and they're making double than we do. I mean, that's really ridiculous.
And first and foremost, they ensure that their livelihoods are protected, which is a big problem. And the president-elect has already announced that he's going to implement a policy, issue a policy that would make some 100,000 workers work under at-will employment agreements, which is what, in my view, all government workers, just like we have commonly found in the private sector, should serve under at-will employment law.
And it's absolutely, and it's ironic that federal employees have a union, have a trade union in a sense, that is working to basically go against some of these changes and reforms that will be advanced. And it's important that Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, and President-elect Donald Trump really focus on the urgency. They really don't have much time. I would say perhaps even one or maybe less than a 2-year period of time to really implement these changes. And we need to see that urgency play out with real implementation of reforms.
Natasha, what do you think about including two business titans in such a role and tapping them to really go through the government, review every dime of spending with a fine-tooth comb, and then make recommendations to the president, to the Congress on reforms that could be as radical as eliminating agencies such as the Department of Education that is thought to be unneeded? Do you think it's a good idea to bring business people in for that task?
I do think that they're the best, best knowledge that they have. They're managing big corporations, and they have to go through that process every day. They need to eliminate waste. They need to eliminate fraud. They need to be able to achieve as much results as much possible with at least the smallest cost possible. So basically, they know how to do it, and they are basically being out of the government. They are not loyal to any, inside structures and the way that things have been done so far, what we are also calling the swamp, where it comes to administrative state, when it's being so bloated that the agency are doing all three branches of government. They legislate, they execute, and they also provide like a judicial services. So this all has to be cut and brought to bare minimum of functioning government for the people. So we need the government that provides, basic services, and going back to the definitions of why government was instituted by the people, to provide those services that people cannot provide for themselves individually. So that's when you come to defense, to some foreign policy, to military, obviously, to protecting law and order in the country, to a certain extent in some other welfare services as well, for people to be able to be helped, those that are not able to provide for themselves. So going back to the basic functions of government, and then starting to reduce the waste. And there's so much waste that it's unbelievable when you go through all these reports that are done by some agencies, non-partisan ones.
Absolutely. Joe, what do you think about how the posture from the federal government may change under a President Trump on the global stage, especially as it pertains to these wars in Israel and Iran, the conflict there, Ukraine and Russia? How might that change?
Well, I think just on election night, or election early morning, when we all saw the results, we began to see changes in foreign policy in the sense of how other countries are responding to America. All of a sudden, you saw Hamas saying, they certainly want to end this conflict. For example, Iran even came out and said, well, you know what, you caught us trying to assassinate then candidate Donald Trump. We're not going to mess with that issue anymore. You're also seeing, for example, today, the German Chancellor Olaf calling Putin and saying, let's work out a deal where we can certainly end this war. And he had not made this call in 2 years' time. So you are beginning to see changes, but one of the things that I'd like to share with you, and I think this is so important for our everyday working Americans to realize that there's going to be a pushback, not just only from government, but from think tanks as well,
Yeah.
including those on the center right. I hate to mention names at this
Yeah.
moment, but we certainly need to hold these center right think tanks, self proclaimed conservative groups that have really been waging or actually fueling this interest of waging wars around the world.
Yeah, too many other special interests I think are going to weigh in. Joel, Natasha, always good talking to you guys. Appreciate you coming on. Thanks.
Thank you, Gerard.
Thank you, Gerard.
Talk again soon. We're coming right back, folks.